Were you on the team during the Malice and the Palace?
Yeah.
Just give us a brief. I don't want you to get too. Just give us a brief on kind of, what was like even going through your mind during that?
There was players fighting each other, coaches fighting players, our coaches and our players fighting. And finally it gets calmed down and Ron Artest looks around and he goes, y'all think we're going to get fined for that? And then the next time we went back, because we had to go back for the next game, they called in a bomb threat. They closed the arena down and we had to clear out and they searched for a bomb. And they're like, it's up to you guys if you want to go back in and play. I'm like, no, we're not. And I got outvoted by a bunch of idiots that were like, yeah, no, I'll risk my life to go play a basketball game. I was like, guys, I got a lot to live for. I really like this thing called life. I'm not risking it to go. Like, what if there's a bomb in there? And they're like, well, they didn't find one. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point when you have a bomb in a building.
Dad used to tell me all the time. Son, don't worry about the mules, just load the wagon.
What's up, everybody? If you are a college football fan like me, if you know a college football fan that's in your life, you need to go cop this shirt. New designs dropping all the time. It's the perfect gift with the holiday season coming around. If you don't have this thing, you're missing out. Great material, great fabric. I wear it all the time. Go get yours today.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Rock Chalk Unplugged. I'm Chris Teahan, along with my co-host Mitch Lightfoot. We have a big-time guest today, Kansas legend Scot Pollard. Scott, how are we doing?
I'm getting old. That's what that means when I start getting introduced as a legend.
You are a legend. You are a legend. It's a great thing. Scott, I wanted to ask you, you've been following along with the Jayhawks, obviously this year, this past Indiana game. What did you see from the Hawks in that game, and what do you think that we need to do to make sure we're successful down in March?
Well, it's there's some things that are typical, and you guys know Bill Self better than I do, but there's some things that are typical of a Bill Self team that are happening right now, and it's, lack of a bench production, and there's some inconsistencies, and even among the starters, and who we can depend on night in and night out, and that's typical for this time of year. It's also typical this time of year that somebody on the bench or the bench as a collective starts getting better and starts contributing more. Casual fans might hit the panic button like, oh no, there's nothing going right. Like, we don't have a bench at all. And they're just, but again, that's kind of a typical Bill Self thing, I think, where, he goes heavy on the starters early and then, the bench starts to perform, and then we get into league play and it's a whole balanced team and we have a deep playoff run. So, I just feel like that's kind of on par for what Coach Self does. And I specifically the Indiana game, I think it's been the last couple games. I think that our pick and roll defense has been exposed a little bit. It looks like big fella doesn't move too well, and other teams are going to try to exploit that. I'd love, because, when I finished, I was second, I think, all time in block shots. I've been passed, but I'd like to see him blocking the shots more and being a little bit more of a rim protector, but that's just not his game. It's not his style. So I'm not going to get mad at him for not being that guy. There has to be somebody in there that we can push defenders or push offensive players towards, and know that there's going to be somebody there to at least alter shots. As opposed to getting all the way to the basket. Marquette did a great job of that. I think Indiana did a great job of it as well. We made the run at the right time.
100%. And you talked about ball screen defense, and it's no secret out there that Hunter does not move as well as some of the bigs that we've had in the past. Do you think that's more on the guards to recognize that, hey, maybe we need to give them a little bit more help off those ball screens? Because the Big 12 is such a guard-heavy league now. You look at teams like Houston, you look at teams like Baylor. If you're dropping off of ball screens that don't have good ball screen defense, those guys will go for 50. Do you think it's more on the guards to make sure they get over and only have him be a one-slide help kind of guy, or are we still going to be down in ball screens?
That's an adjustment that's going to come based on who's on the floor. Helping him out. I think some guys are going to be able to help him out better than others and get there. And then there's going to be guys that are just going to stay on their man because they got to. And again, I think other coaches on opposing teams are going to take advantage of that. They're going to put a shooter on the opposite side, so you can't leave him and go help. So it's going to be a personnel dependent maneuver, but yeah, it's something that probably needs to be addressed because it's obvious. I mean, if we're talking about it, the other coaches know about it too. So they're going to keep hammering it and taking advantage of it until Coach Self makes an adjustment and the team, gets an understanding of, hey, we've got to help big fella out or we're going to have to down the screens and keep him home. But even then, like I said, he's not a great rim protector. So, maybe having him stand still down low is better because he'll be there. But, we don't want to get him in foul trouble either.
Yeah. I think the one thing that it does bode well for Kansas is the fact that we have DeJuan, who's already been Defensive Player of the Year in the Big 12. We have KJ, who's a great defender in himself. Kevin, who is in the running for Big 12 Defender of the Year. So, there's three guys right there that can help cover up for him. But if it's all about having all five connected, and as soon as Hunter can either start to alter those shots or we change something up to where he doesn't have to move as much and he can just stay and be a 7'2" guy and stand in the paint and try it and at least stand there and alter shots. That we need to do something like that. But next question I wanted to get to is the rivalry with Mizzou, having it be back. Do you think that the games that have happened currently have the same passion as they did in the 90s, or is that something that we need to understand and people don't quite understand right now?
I think it's hard for young people to understand. The old folks like myself remember the Big 8 and the Big 6 even, the people older than me, and that rivalry and how it was continuous. I do like seeing it back, but at the same time, it's kind of like the Indiana home and homes now. It's kind of like the Kentucky home and homes now, where it's just another non-conference game. Does it mean as much? No, I don't think so, because you're not going to see them twice a year and then in the Big 12 tournament and then in, the familiarity, I think, breeds the rivalry.
Yeah.
And so when you're only playing them once a year and you're not going to see them again, and potentially, the contract runs out.
Yeah.
It's different. So do I like seeing it back on the schedule? Yeah, but it's not the same. And it just won't be because of those factors. It is cool to reminisce, to talk about how that's, such an incredible rivalry it was. And how it started and all that. The history part of it is what I learned as a Jayhawk once I was in school. I didn't know anything about it before I was there. It became one of my favorite teams to play. And if I remember correctly, that's the only team that I didn't have a winning record against. We tied over my 4 years with Missouri. I don't think we had a winning record. Everybody else we did, but I think Missouri was the one that we actually had a tie record with because you just never know. I mean, shoot, it was brutal. We hated playing against them. We get stuff thrown at us by the antlers. Batteries, coins. They were bad back then. They made some really nasty signs. One time we got off the bus and somebody had an effigy of, I can't remember whose jersey it was, if it was Paul's or Jock's, but they had it burning from a noose. I mean, there was some nasty stuff that those dudes did. Yeah, I mean, it was, and I've heard worse from previous years, but it's one of those things that is just that rivalry was special, and now it's back on, and I'm glad to see it, but it's not, I don't think, ever going to be the same.
Is there anything that Coach Williams did to educate you guys on the rivalry, or was that intensity itself, going to the games, having the Antlers act like that, was that the education itself?
It was both. Roy used to tell us about how much he hated Norm Stewart, the coach of Missouri. I hate that man. I mean, we knew they played golf together. We knew they did charity events together. But he's like, I tell you what, if I get that man alone, I'll take him out. And he may get me once, but he's not going to end me. Let me tell you this, little young fellas. If I see that man alone on the street and I can get away with it, I'm going to take that man out. So, I mean, he tried to breed that it was just hateful from the whole, from the get-go. And in some ways it was, but that is part of what made it special. I mean, the whole crowd would be chanting "Sit down, Norm," because he didn't like to sit down on the bench. He was always standing. Things like that. And then I think at the end when he retired, somebody got him a rocking chair, put it on the court, which I thought was cool. I mean, it was both an honor and, it was kind of a sideways insult, but Roy definitely helped fan the flames of that rivalry. And then, you do a little history. That was what I was going to do, is teach history in high school. So I started learning some American history myself about, the importance of that rivalry and where it came from.
Yeah.
And you've been
one of my favorite videos is the Mizzou hype video that you're in, and you're talking about how they came to town, they burned our houses, they killed our horses. That's in the video, and we watched that a bunch before the rivalry restarted back in 2017 when we played them in an exhibition. I remember we watched that video kind of as a team back in the dorms, and that was pretty cool seeing you.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know that. I could go on, but it was a cool rivalry and began with actual bloodshed. You can talk about other rivalries in college basketball or football or whatever. To my knowledge, none of them started with people burning each other's houses down and killing each other, and things. War was guerrilla warfare, basically. It's pretty unique.
Real more.
Yeah. And you summed that up very well, but you also have been very vocal on Twitter about the Chiefs chant at the end of the national anthem. Is that something that's rooted from just the Chiefs being located in Missouri, or is it something about just how special the cathedral of college basketball out in Fieldhouse is that we shouldn't be bringing anything from the outside in? Because I've been a big Chiefs guy my whole life, and I always enjoyed hearing it because that meant that we were doing well. I mean, I used to go in 2008 when the Chiefs were 1-9 or 1 whatever it was. So is that something that came from just your hatred of Missouri, or is that something that just came from, hey, let's keep basketball pure inside the cathedral?
It's the second part.
Appreciate it, Mitch and Chris. Before we get back to Rock Chalk, I got to tell you guys about the best way to make money on sports. I've been in search of the best way to fire on sports for the last year or so. I've tried every sports book, all the different apps, but Prize Picks is the best way to make money on sports. On Prize Picks, you pick players and not teams. Each player has a set total stat projection. So let's say Patrick Mahomes has a higher or lower than 220 passing yards. If you think he's going to have more, you just click on more. When it hits, you make a bunch of money. I just hit a 4-player pick'em last night, 10x in my money, $100 to win 1,000. And the best part is you can go to prizepicks.com/rockchalk and use the code ROCKCHALK for a 100% deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/rockchalk. Use the promo code ROCKCHALK for a 100% deposit match up to $100. Who knows what you can turn that $100 into? I turned mine into 1,000 last night. Let me know what you do in the comments.
First of all, I don't like anybody cheering for anybody besides the Jayhawks in Allen Fieldhouse. It's the cathedral of college basketball. It's a special place, and one of the things that makes it special is the fans cheering so loud. I mean, it's the loudest indoor arena in the world. It's a record-setting place. So why sully that? Why make it a little less special by cheering for a pro football team in a different state? That part doesn't make sense to me at all. I don't go to hockey games and wear Boston Celtics gear. That's just me. It doesn't make sense to me. And I will say that a lot of the same people that do that Chiefs cheer are the people that were really going nuts about somebody kneeling during the national anthem. So you got to pick one. And you can't do both. You can't be upset if somebody's kneeling during the anthem, but you're also cheering for the Chiefs during the anthem. To me, it's the same thing. You either respect the anthem and you just let it play out, or do your Chiefs thing at Arrowhead where it makes sense. And, I don't even like it at the football games. I was at a Kansas game with my son, the Kansas State game, because Ozzie was getting recruited by Kansas. So they invited us out for a game, and And they did it at the end, and I'm sitting there like, we're trying to build something with the football program, and we've got it. We've got a great coach. We've got a great staff. We've got winners. We've got highly rated recruits coming in now, and 2 years in a row football bowls, and they're chanting Chiefs at the end of the anthem. I mean, how special is that for the recruits to come in and say, I'm from Texas, or I'm from California, or I'm from Iowa, whatever. They don't care about the Chiefs, and they're coming in and they're hearing Chiefs, the home of the Chiefs, like, well, maybe I'm not going to school here because they're cheering for a different team than the team that I'm here to play for.
Yeah.
And that's my concern. And I was with the recruits. I was sitting with them, obviously. And more than a couple of them, it was my son, but also some other kids were like, did they just yell Chiefs? Like, why did they do that? They're like, well, that's dumb. And so that's my thing. I want Kansas athletics to be special because they are. And I think that the fans are why Kansas athletics are special. And if I could change it, I would. I would make sure that all the fans are like, you know what? I'm here to cheer on the Jayhawks. Not my favorite pro sports team. I have a favorite pro sports team too, but it has nothing to do with them being from the Missouri rivalry. It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a Raiders fan. I promise. It really is just that I think Kansas athletics are special. And I don't want them cheering that at the volleyball games. I don't want to, whatever, any sporting event. If they do it at baseball games, and also I will, I will add to that personally, I don't think they should play the anthem before every athletic event. That's just my opinion. I think it's a time that players are warmed up, and then you got to spend 5 minutes cooling off, waiting for the person to sing or for it to play. I personally, as many games as I played in, I'd prefer to just stay warm and let's go. If you're going to play it early, or just not at all. But I don't think I'm going to win that battle.
The thing that has changed for us in our last year, Chris, is we were back in the locker room during when the national anthem was sang, and we would come out of the tunnel after it was already done. So that was like the time where coach was having a speech with us in the locker room. And then we would come out on the court, warm up, and play. So that has been a little different for us, in at least basketball.
Yeah, and we did that. I mean, I think they still do that. I've been to 2 games this year, and both of the games they did that where it was just the cheerleaders out there with whoever's singing it. So it has changed over the last, I think, 5 years. Our first couple of years they did it, if I remember correctly. But, yeah, so that's something that has changed.
Scott, I wanted to transfer over and talk to you a little bit about your time at Kansas. First off, I want to start in a little chronological order. Your recruiting story with Coach Williams. What was that like? What was it like having Coach Williams come and recruit you?
Well, like everything else in my life, hard work garnered me the respect and the opportunities that I've gotten in my life. It wasn't given. I'm the youngest of 6. All 5 of my siblings got scholarship offers and played Division I, with the exception of my sister, who just didn't want to play college athletics. But I was on I was known because of that, because of my brothers. But at the same time, no one was recruiting me in San Diego. I was just another big white guy, But then my sophomore year of high school, I mean, I was getting recruited. I got letters, and my first one I got from Jim Boeheim at Syracuse in 7th grade, because that was back when they mailed you letters. You guys know what letters are?
Yeah,
I know.
It wasn't an email. It wasn't Twitter. I was known because of my family and because of the size and all that. But, I still wasn't getting really looked at until I started beating up guys that were signed, that were getting looked at. And all of a sudden, so I had Jerry Green, who was one of Roy's assistants that never was actually there when I was there. He was the first one that saw me. And then he took a job somewhere else, I think Oregon or Tennessee. I can't remember which one he went to first. And then it went to Kevin Stallings, who was another assistant. And Kevin said the same thing, like, hey, you got to check this kid out. And then Roy showed up and Roy took over. It made me feel special because I jumped from assistant to the head man himself. And that's the only person I talked to from that point on once Roy took over. So I picked KU because of Roy. I was going to stay home. I grew up in San Diego and I wanted to go to UCLA really bad, or Arizona. I actually verbally committed to Arizona. They had me out, had one of my former college. We didn't play together, but a kid that went to my high school was my host at Arizona. They took me to a party and there was a lot of pretty girls there. And I liked that. And so I verbally committed to Arizona. Lute Olson's wife made me breakfast after the party. They treated me pretty special. But I would say the one thing was at practice, the team was down on the court practicing, and Lute was up in the stands just sitting there, just watching. And then people would come in and start talking to him, and he'd talk to him, and the practice is going on, and he's just kind of like not really paying attention. The assistants were running the practice. I thought that was a little weird. But Roy took a vested interest, or at least it seemed like it. And Roy made me feel special. He made me feel like I was the only one that he was recruiting. He said he wasn't going to eat dessert until I committed somewhere. And so that's how I committed to him, actually, is when I was out there for late night, and back then it was midnight. And being in San Diego, it's not really an indoor sports city. I'd never seen 17,000 people inside ever in my life. And it was midnight. I was like, what is wrong with these people? I just had never heard of that. And it was amazing to me. And so that helped for sure. But it was also, Roy was Roy. And back to my brothers, they all went to college, and all of their coaches changed during their time in college, and they all ended up transferring. And I didn't want that. And so I said, Coach, if you promise me you're not leaving, you're not going to get fired, I know that, but you're not leaving to go back to North Carolina, then I'm coming here. And he promised me. He said, I'm not going anywhere. This is where I want to be. Funny story, I heard, I don't know if this is true, you'd have to ask everybody since me, but I heard that promise was told through generations, and the last guys that he promised were Kirk Heinrich and Nick Collison, because everybody else made him promise that he wasn't leaving, and he made that promise, and Nick and Kirk were the last guys that he promised that he wasn't going to leave. So I like I said, I think I heard that, but I don't know for sure if that's true. But Roy he still is like a father figure to me. I lost my dad in high school, so I kind of went through the recruiting part alone with my mom, and I was homeless for a little while. I was couch surfing. My mom went to go live with one of my brothers, and so I stayed in San Diego my junior year, and I was just kind of like living with whoever would live me. I wasn't like homeless on the street, but I wasn't in the house with my mom. So I definitely needed somebody that was going to be there and be a father figure for me. And Roy was that guy. He just called me a little while ago to check in on me. So we've kept in touch, even though he has no reason to keep in touch with me. He's still that guy for me.
That's super, super cool. I've only heard good things about Roy. I was obviously probably around 4 years old when he left Kansas, so I had a little bit of hatred for him, but that was just because he left, and I knew everybody in my household was super upset about it. He left the program leaps and bounds ahead of where it was. So Roy, he played a pivotal part in college basketball history.
Oh, I was pissed at him too, by the way. Just so you know. I was like, you're going to go back and follow Dean Smith? There was actually a little bit of I was in the papers. I got quoted. I said some not so nice things about Roy. I was pissed off that he left. And, I wanted him to be the guy forever at Kansas, the guy that retired at Kansas. And, I'll never forget Danny Manning's statement when that happened, the transition to Bill Self. And Danny said, Kansas basketball was great before Roy Williams. Kansas basketball was great with Roy Williams, and Kansas basketball is going to be great after Roy Williams. And he's right.
Yeah, he was right. Couldn't have had a better hire.
Yeah.
So we talked about your recruitment and how you got to Kansas. You obviously mentioned Midnight Madness, late night in the fog, where it was at 12 o'clock at night. You said you'd never seen so many people inside of Allen Fieldhouse. But what was your actual welcome to Kansas moment, where it was like, this place is different?
So Jock Vaughn and I had played with each other in some all-star games, and it wasn't exactly a handshake deal, but we both kind of mentioned, like, hey, man, if you go to Kansas, I'm going. Like, we played well together in those games, and we thought we liked each other. So we're roommates at the Jayhawk Towers back in the old days. You guys don't know about that, but that's where we used to live. And they're still there. I just drove by them a couple months ago when I was out there for that football game. Still just the brick jungle. But anyway, so Jock and I are rooming together, and I mean, it just happened. Indiana, Kansas, and Jock hits that game winner. I was wearing a different jersey. I was in there at the end of the game wearing number 54 because I'd been scrapping, and I got blood all over me. And so I had to change jerseys. They didn't have a number 31, another one. So I was wearing blank 54. And I went out to try to set a screen on him, and the defender just went right under me. And I think I had 3 or 4 fouls, and coach was like, do not foul. I was like, I got you. So I just stood there like a dummy, and Jock just dribbled by, and I didn't end up setting a screen because I couldn't move. I didn't want to move and get an offensive foul. And then I just dove to the basket. Jock hits that 3 and wins the game. Damon Bailey had 33 that game against us, and they were good. Indiana was really good that year, and we kind of did a good job. I think Calbert Chaney was on that team, and I think we did a good job slowing him down. But Damon Bailey, their guard, had 33. So, I mean, it was a rough game. Not only did that place erupt, and it was like, holy crap, what the you know what? I'm just going to cuss. Holy shit, what the fuck? That was incredible in itself. But then we got back home to the Jayhawk Towers, and our door was covered in notes, and there was balloons and just all kinds of stuff taped to the door, like, awesome shot, Jock. You guys rock chalk, Jayhawk. That was when we were like, this doesn't happen in Southern California, where both of us are from. You know, they, like I said earlier, this is outdoor venues in Southern California. People don't congregate inside. UCLA games aren't sold out night in and night out because people have other stuff to do outside in the nice weather. That was my welcome to Kansas moment, and it was because of Jock, like most of the moments in Kansas were. But it was that's when we both were just like, man, we made the right choice. This place is special.
Scott, I wanted to touch on a little bit. Obviously, you played for Coach Williams, and you've watched a lot of Coach Self basketball. Are there any similarities between the two coaching styles that you've seen?
I've seen y'all's practices. No.
Not similar?
We pretty much ran from minute one of every practice. We had a practice plan, and it would be posted on the wall before practice. Had an offensive emphasis of the day, a defensive emphasis of the day, and a thought of the day. And we had to know those at any point during practice, and Coach loved picking on freshmen. If he said, Scott, what's the offensive emphasis of the day, and I didn't know it, whether I was crimson or blue, that team had to get on the end line and run if I didn't know it. And so the intensity of making a mistake and having your teammates pay for it was always there from minute one. It works for both of them, but they are very, very different coaches.
Just different.
Yeah, just different. Like I said, I've been to a couple Coach Self practices, and I'm like, this is like an NBA shoot around. It's very relaxed. There's not a lot of yelling. There's a lot of poking fun. There's a lot of sarcasm, and there's a lot of work getting done. But I mean, our practices, it was deathly quiet. Nobody talked but Roy Williams. And we'd break up bigs and smalls, and then the assistant coaches would talk during that time. But when coach was talking, nobody was talking. And it's just, it was a very different style. When I went and saw Coach Self's practice for the first time, I was like, everybody was talking. Every single person was talking all at the same time. I'm like, whoa, it's a big difference in styles.
I've heard some rumors that back in the day, obviously there wasn't the practice gym there, so you guys did all of your practicing in the field house, even during the summer. And for those that don't know, the field house turns into a sauna during the summer. Yeah,
there's no air conditioning in there. And there actually used to be a track inside the concourse on the main floor. That was a track when I was there. You know, where there's the wall of memories and everything. Like, there was a track there. We used to run around that. And the rafters would be in the way. You had to kind of duck.
Especially for the 7-footers.
You had to run on the outside of the track, because if you took the inside route, you could knock your head on one of the rafters. So it's changed quite a bit. Yeah. And we either practice there or we'd go to Robinson Gymnasium, which is across the street. And that's where we played all our pickup games. Same thing though. There's no air conditioning in there. Or there wasn't. And, but yeah, it was different, man. I'll never forget. We were undefeated my senior year, except when we went to Paris. And we went to Paris and played these semi-pro teams where they had a couple of Americans on the team and, whatever. And they had special rules. And we lost. I'm not going to go into depth about it, but we lost. We get on the Concorde, go back home, land in New York, get on a plane, go to Kansas City, land in Kansas City, get on a bus, go back to the field house. And we're thinking we got a day off because we just traveled from France. And Roy says, taped it on the court in 30 minutes.
Oh, my God.
Uh-oh. Because someone took advantage of the free wine on the Concorde. This guy. That was a rough day, my friends.
That's crazy.
I was at 80,000 feet or however high the Concorde flies, and I'm drinking wine because they're like, yeah, have some wine. Here's some more wine. It's on you. It's on the house. I'm like, all right, cool. And then we get back to the field house, and Roy's like, taped it on the court in 30 minutes. I'm like, uh-oh.
Not a single free throw was made.
No, we had a drill called Drill de Paris because we didn't play good enough defense. We did defensive slides back and forth across the key for 30 seconds and then stopped and then did it again and then stopped and then did it again. It's called Drill de Paris because we didn't slide across the lane and help our teammates enough. And we all got in foul trouble. And actually, I was the only one in the second half of the first game. Apparently 3 fouls was the rule. It was 10-minute halves, and you get 3 fouls for the game. Well, 3 of our starters, Paul, Jock, and Rafe, all had 3 fouls in the first 10 minutes. And so I'm lining up for the tip-off for the second half, and the guy goes, that guy, and that guy are fouled out. I don't know what the fuck you're doing. And I was like, no, they only have 3. He goes, yeah, that's it. They're gone. Roy lost his mind. Apparently he didn't know the rules either. And he was not happy. He didn't cuss, but he was not happy. So that was our trip overseas. And that was our only loss until we got to the tournament and lost to Arizona. Or Missouri, sorry. Again, back to the Missouri. I hate those guys.
Hate them.
Hate them. They always end up coming up. So you obviously, I mean, your 4 years at Kansas probably had the most talented rosters, arguably, throughout recent memory. I mean, you played with Jock, you played with Paul Pierce, Rafe. I mean, you played with absolutely everybody you could probably think of who went to the league in the 90s. If you had to pick one of those guys, the most talented person you played with or alongside of Kansas, who was it?
Man, it's tough because Jock was such a leader and willed our team to victory so many times, and distributed the basketball. He was a pass first guy, just like Juan. He's a guy that was such a leader on the court. I don't know that we'd win many games without Jock. But as far as just flat out talent, I mean, Paul was like Bambi. We called him Bambi. He was all knees and elbows. He was skinny. But that dude he just stayed after practice every day and played basketball with anybody that would play. Managers, he'd pick on the managers and be like, you got to stay and play because nobody else wants to stay after. We had just run ourselves to death. And Paul's like, I need more. And so Paul just, his athleticism and his basketball knowledge became so apparent at that age, even though he wasn't the finished product, the truth yet. We all knew it. So it's hard to pick between him and Rafe because Rafe was consistent. Rafe was there every single day just throwing buckets. There wasn't anybody that could slow him down. He just turn, shoot that shot, it's good. So people laugh at me. They were like, how did you get drafted 19th in the NBA? You averaged like 12 points a game or something like that. I'm like, I was the 6th option. It was Paul, Rafe, Jock, Jared Haas, who, by the way, played his senior year with a broken wrist. Otherwise, he would have had some NBA tryouts as well. Then back to Paul. Then maybe if somebody missed, I'd go get the ball and go put it in. I mean, there was a lot of talent on that team. We had guys coming off the bench that ended up playing in the NBA for a little bit. Billy Thomas, who was a hell of a shooter. Ryan Robertson and I were teammates in Sacramento for a year. And he took over the starting job when Jock had his broken wrist at the beginning of our senior year. So, I mean, we had a ridiculous amount of talent coming off the bench. Our bench could have beat a lot of Big 12 teams. It was the Big 8 until we won the last Big 8 my junior year and then the first Big 12 my senior year. But, I mean, we had that was a good team.
All right, Scott, I want to transition over a little bit and talk about your NBA experience. Obviously, with being drafted, what is that experience like for you? What was your draft night experience, and how did you know where you were going to play?
So I was projected late first round, early second round, and that's what my agent told me. And so I didn't go to the draft. Back then it was in New York, and only the lottery guys went. You didn't have 100 guys there all thinking they were going to be a lottery pick, like it seems to be now. And so I went to Vegas. I was newly married. It was my first wife, newly married, and one of my brothers flew down, and we were in Vegas, and we watched it in the sports book. Because that was the only place it wasn't on national TV. So we had to go to the sports book to catch it. And so, like I said, I was projected late first round, early second round. I went and worked out for every team that was, in that bracket except for Utah. And I met with the GM of Utah, the Jazz, and Phoenix at this All-Star game in Phoenix. And he was like, we think it's a great fit. Your former teammate, Greg Ostertag, is here. Jerry Sloan, the head coach, loves you. Management loves you. We really think you'd be a great fit for us. I said, yep, you're right. But I'm not coming here. And he was like, what? I was like, listen, I was born here. I'm related to most of this state. I could fill the arena for 41 home games and still piss off family members. I said, I don't have that in my bag. I don't have that in my personal life to deal with all of the family that I'm going to have to get tickets for every game. And I said, so I'm not coming here. I said, it's me. It's a me issue. I agree with you. I'd love to play for Jerry Sloan, but I'm not coming here. So they had the second to last pick of the first round. Chicago had the last pick, and that's who ended up picking Jock. But we were wondering why Jock hadn't got picked. I remember arguing and it was like, why isn't Jock getting picked? And again, we're in the sports book, so we don't have sound. We just have the TV. And all of a sudden they start showing Kansas highlights at the 19th pick. I'm like, oh, finally, Jock got drafted. It's about time. And I'm like, they're showing a lot of me. And then my phone rings, and it was like one of those, open up. And it sounded like a walkie-talkie because this was 1997. And they go, hey, Scott, this is the Detroit Pistons. We just picked you. And I was like, hey. And then I got kicked out of the sports book because you can't be on your phone, or you couldn't at the time, be on your phone and be in the sports book. So they kicked me out, and that was my draft night experience. They sent me from sent me tickets, and I flew from Vegas to Detroit the next day for press conferences, and that's when I became a Detroit Piston.
Not a bad story. That's not a bad story at all.
But it was just funny, like arguing about why Jock hadn't been drafted. And so I didn't know until the next day when he got drafted, because we had to leave the sports book and I was making plans for Detroit. So it was just funny because Jock was projected to be a lottery pick after our junior year, and he decided to come back, broke his wrist, and, still had an incredible senior year, but then the draft just was a different draft. So he slid down to the last pick, or second to last pick.
Okay, so Scott, you obviously had a huge personality while you were at Kansas, but during your professional career, that's where it kind of came a little bit more to light. I mean, the hairstyles are kind of what you were known for during the NBA. You became almost like a cult figure to many people who followed the NBA. What kind of brought out that personality? Was it just having more freedom being in the NBA? Was it maybe just having a little bit more money? Kind of bring us on the path that developed you to being the character that you became.
Well, I've always danced to my own beat. When I was 7th grade, I dyed my hair blonde. I had the faux hawk. Like, I had hair, but then I had a faux hawk. I did that to myself in 7th or 8th grade also. So it had always been a thing. I like I said earlier, I'm the youngest of 6. My whole family is Mormon, which is it's a big part of who I am. I'm not a believer in the church, but it is a big part of my upbringing, and so that might be part of that, is just kind of rebelling from the strict religious upbringing. But as far as, like, I showed up to media day one time in college, I think it was my sophomore year, with blonde hair, and Roy just looked at me. He goes, "Come here, we're going to have a talk." And he took me into his office. I was like, uh-oh. maybe this wasn't a good decision. I thought maybe he's going to kick me off the team or something. And he goes, if any of your teammates had done that, they'd be off this team. But he goes, "I know you dance yourself to a different drummer, so I'm going to allow it, but, just don't go crazy on me." I was like, "Coach, I'm the same dude." And he goes, "All right." And so he got a lot of questions about it on that media day, and he kind of said the same thing. But as far as it continuing in the NBA, I didn't really paint my nails in the NBA. I felt like that was kind of played out at college, and I was done with it. But the hairstyles are just, hey, let's see what this looks like. The only thing I never pulled off was an afro, because I don't have curly hair, but I always wished I had. I wanted to try one more hairstyle. That was the one. But now I have one hairstyle, and it's no hair.
Fire.
Yeah.
It works.
So I'm glad I got it in while I could.
I wanted to ask you, who is the toughest player that you had to guard in the NBA?
Prime Shaq.
Oh,
Yeah. My back still hurts. That dude, Prime Shaq was about 360 pounds. Don't believe the hype. I know what 360 feels like. My dad was 360, and Shaq was every bit of 360 pounds. Yao was really hard to move. Like, Yao just went where he wanted to. But if you bodied up Yao, he wasn't going to spin off you and catch a lob dunk. And that's Shaq. You couldn't just muscle Shaq, because I tried. And not only is it a losing battle, but also he had that such crazy quick athleticism that he just spin off you and get him. He had the hook, and they let him get away with that hook. But there was literally nothing you could do. I know what the guys that had to guard Wilt Chamberlain felt like, because that's how dominant Shaq was in his prime. I mean, he was fast. He'd spin on you. He'd shove you out of the way and dunk on your face. I mean, dude that was the toughest guy I had to guard. And I guarded my idols. I guarded Patrick Ewing. I guarded Hakeem Olajuwon. I put my hands on Charles Barkley. These are guys that I grew up watching, and I was like in the same league with them. And that was my welcome to the NBA moment. I'm out there guarding Patrick Ewing my rookie year. I'm like, what the hell is going on in my life? But you get used to it real quick, because you got to compete. you can't be in awe of the guys you're playing against. You got to compete with them. But I mean, I guarded Yao Ming. Some of the greatest players, centers that have ever played the game, I played against. You know, Karl Malone. These guys that you when you think this was one of the greatest centers of all time. Tim Duncan and I were the same age, but guarded Tim. David Robinson, his teammate. And David was slowed by a back injury at the end of his career, early in my career. But I feel like I guarded a lot of the best, and still Prime Shaq was the toughest. It was just
were any of those guys shit talkers? Like, were they letting you know about it, or was it more of
just Charles? And Charles is a great man. We're friends to this day. But I mean, he'd be like, "Rookie, you don't want none of this. Really, y'all put a rookie on me." Like, just he was always talking. He hasn't shut up since.
If you watch NBA, he still talks.
He's still talking. So, but you know that the rest of them, Tim Duncan was well known for how quiet he was. He would just once in a while he'd be like, "Oops," because he's about to score on you, and he'd make you stutter or miss, and he'd be like, "Oops," and just score it. Like, that's worse. That's worse. But yeah, like Kevin Garnett used to talk a lot. I hated Kevin until we were teammates. And then when we were teammates, I realized why I hated him, because he's a competitor. Guy plays his ass off all the time, and he works. And that's what I love about him as a teammate is those guys that I used to hate playing against, and all of a sudden I'm teammates with him, like Reggie Miller, same thing. I mean, literally the first guy in the gym every day at 38 years old when we were teammates. And he's in there before everybody else, getting ready, shooting after practice, same thing. So anyway, I'm going off on tangents. Prime Shaq.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And actually, that kind of ropes into our next question. Actually, I have just kind of a one-off. Were you on the team during the Malice in the Palace, or no? With Indiana, you were.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Okay, just give us a brief. I don't want you to get too. Just give us a brief on kind of what was like even going through your mind during that.
Well, the game was done. We had won handily, but our coach wanted to send a message. Rick Carlisle wanted to send a message because they knocked us out of the playoffs the spring before, and we were supposed to win it. We were ranked above them. I think we had the best record in the East or in the league or something like that, and so we were supposed to win it all the previous spring, and Detroit knocked us out. So Rick wanted to send a message, and we sent it. But he still had the starters in, and it was getting chippy. And no one talks about this, but if the coaches had taken the starters out of the game, that night never happens. We win the game, and it's just another game. And that doesn't happen, and we don't lose half our team to suspensions. So Ron, at the time, refused his mental health issues. He refused medication. He refused to go to treatments. He would disappear on us many times throughout the year, show up to practice barefoot in shorts in the middle of winter in Indiana. He was somebody that once he was playing, you could depend on him being an incredible player. But there were times when he'd walk into practice and we would just go tick, tick, tick. It was just a matter of time before coach threw him out of practice, because you could tell when he'd come in and sometimes he just wasn't there. And so we saw that. We saw it coming, and he should have been taken out of the game, and he wasn't. And him and Ben kept yelling at each other and kept hitting each other, and then he gets the foul called on him, and he does the most passive-aggressive thing a person could do. He goes and lays on the scorer's table. I mean, that's just – in Detroit, I mean, that's – What'd you think was going to happen? You're beating the crap out of our team, and you go lay on the scorer's table. I mean, the fans,
especially in Detroit.
Yeah, the fans went nuts, and Detroit was such a great place to play in those days, that era. Not when I was there as a player, but years later when they were winning championships again. I mean, that crowd was incredible, and they did not like that one bit. And so Ronnie totally started it. Got the stuff thrown at him. Jumps up, runs into the stands, beats up the wrong dude. Wasn't even the guy that threw the beer at him. And then, it was awful. It was awful. We're standing there, and I had been suspended for a game before when I was with the Kings for stepping onto the court during a fight. And so I was like, I'm not moving. I'm not spending that money. For me, the $5,000 fine that I had to pay for getting suspended, okay, that sucks, right? They also took 1/82nd of my pay. That's a whole game. 1/82nd of my annual salary got taken away for missing that game. So people don't think about that. That step onto the court cost me $60,000. I wasn't about to spend any money during the Malice in the Palace and step on the court again. Love you guys, but I love my money more. I earned this. I'm not giving it away. Yeah. No one's threatening me.
What does the locker room look like after that? Like, obviously, one of the craziest events in NBA history. Like, what does the locker room? What does the coach even say?
Well, there was fights. There was players fighting each other, coaches fighting players. Our coaches and our players fighting, like, had to be separated physically. And finally, it gets calmed down, and Ron Artest looks around. And he goes, "Y'all think we're going to get fined for that?" That was the state of his mind at the time, and he's an incredible advocate for mental health now. I'm really happy for him. He does really good things for other people now, and so I'm glad that he is doing that. But at the time, yeah, it was a mess in the locker room. Everything was ripped up. My suit was ruined. I had all kinds of shit thrown on me as I was pushing everybody out to the tunnel. When they finally called the game, we didn't even finish the game. They called it. And people were just throwing shit at us as I'm trying to just shove players, because players are like, "I'm going to go get that guy." Like, no, you're not. No, let's just get the hell out of here. Like the rookie, David Harrison, jumped up and grabbed a chair and threw it on somebody. I'm like, dude, you're going to go to jail. And he almost did. He hit somebody with a chair, and he pled guilty or something like that. And ended up not going to jail, but he paid a bunch of fines, and he got suspended and lost a lot of salary his rookie year as well. But I mean, the locker room was a mess. They tore it up. My suit, like I said, was torn. I threw that suit away. And then the next time we went back, because we had to go back for the next game, they called in a bomb threat, so we had to leave the arena. They closed the arena down, and we had to clear out, and they searched for a bomb, and they're like, "It's up to you guys if you want to go back in and play." I'm like, "No, we're not."
Yeah.
and I got outvoted by a bunch of idiots that were like, "Yeah, no, I'll risk my life to go play a basketball game." I was like, "Guys, I got a lot to live for. I really like this thing called life. I'm not risking it to go, like, what if there's a bomb in there?" And they're like, "Well, they didn't find one." I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point. When you have a bomb in a building, they hide it. It's not going to be sitting there where everybody can find it. You think they searched an entire NBA arena in 20 minutes and they're confident there's no way there's a bomb in there? They're like, well, they think it was a hoax. We ended up playing the game and we didn't die, but man, I did not like that. I didn't like that my teammates were like, "No, let's just go play the game." I'm like, no, fuck that. I like living, but yeah. That whole Malice in the Palace, that shouldn't have happened. It was easily avoidable, were it not for the coaches' egos, as well as the players' egos. And starters, you guys know, when it's a blowout, starters don't want to be in the game anymore. They did their jobs. The heavy minute guys did their jobs. They won the game or they lost the game, whatever. The losers are pissed and the winners are done. They're like, "Hey, let's get the guys on the bench some minutes. I'm going to rest. I got a game tomorrow night in Cleveland. We got a game in 2 more days. We got to change time zones. I don't want to be here." But
your final year playing in the NBA, you're with the Celtics, and you guys ended up winning a championship. Kind of walk us through just that season a little bit, and what made you kind of be like, "Hey, this is it. Finish out on the top."
Actually, the year before, I was done. When I was in 4th grade, I wrote a letter to myself that I was going to play in the NBA for 10 years. And I did it. Got to the Western Conference Finals. I got to the Eastern Conference Finals with the Pacers, with the Cavaliers, got to the NBA Finals with the Cavaliers in 10 years. And I was like, you know what? I'm just never going to win one. So 10 years was my goal, and I was done. And then my agent called and said, "Hey, Boston wants to sign you. They said, come help us win a championship." I said, "Nah, I'm good. I don't want to move again." And then my financial advisor was like, "Well, if you go to Boston, you can charter planes once in a while on vacation. And I was like, I really like chartering planes. It's private travel is a lot more fun than commercial travel. It's not worth it, but it kind of is. If you can afford it, I highly recommend it. I can't afford it now, but back then I could. So that's really why I ended up going. I went house shopping myself in Boston, and they have a law in the Commonwealth that you cannot rent a house that's older than 1972 if you have children. And I had a newborn. He was 9 months old. And so that eliminated about all of the rentals in the suburbs because Boston's old.
Yeah.
And it's a lead paint thing, but you can't even sign a waiver. You just can't rent a place that's older than 1972, period. So I ended up renting a condo in the Sky downtown near the South Station on top of the Intercontinental. And I will not embarrass myself by admitting publicly how much I spent per month on that place. But let's just say it was a very, very expensive rental. It had 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, overlooking Logan Airport and South Boston, and all of the hotel amenities and 24-hour concierge parking underneath the building. That was living. And I said, that was my last year, so I'm going to enjoy this. And so I ended up spending the fall and early part of the winter there by myself. Really got to know the city, walked to practices sometimes, walked to games sometimes. But the sad thing is the first day I was there in September, we were playing pickup games and I rolled my ankle. And I'd had some ankle issues. And, man, that one, it wasn't good. I kept playing, of course, because I'm an idiot. Finished the day and the trainer takes my tape off and my ankle's just swollen up. He's like, Jesus, when did this happen? I was like, first game, don't worry about it. Ice it up. Let's go. Next day I come in and it's really swollen. I can't move very well. And I fought through that because we went to Europe. We went to Italy, to Rome, and then we were going to England. And I'm walking around Rome and Danny Ainge, the general manager, looks at my ankle and he goes, get the fuck out of here. You're going home. It was too swollen. So he sent me home. I didn't get to go to England with the team. They put me on a commercial flight back home. Got an MRI and the doctor was like, you're getting surgery. I was like, no, I'm not. And he goes, well, you might make it the rest of the season and you might not, but you're going to need surgery at some point. And I said, well, we're going on a championship run. So how long, if I get that surgery, how long am I out? He goes, about 4 months. I said, that's February. No, I'm not missing this season. I'm going to help this team win a championship. And ironically, in February was when it gave out. I was guarding Shaq in the Phoenix, and I turned to run, and the tendon finally popped the rest of the way, and it ruptured completely. And I acted like nothing was wrong, but I couldn't really push off. And Kendrick Perkins was out, so I was starting. And the next night we're in Portland. And I jumped off the wrong foot the whole time in warm-ups, acted like I was just fine. And Joel Prisbilla, I don't know if you remember that name. He was not an all-star. Let's just put it that way. He was a functional role player. I had him boxed out and ball went up, and I tried to get it, and I couldn't. And I ended up fouling him, and he got an and one. And Doc Rivers takes me out, and he goes, you're done. Sit down. Something's wrong. I go, no, I'm fine. He goes, no, Scott, you can't jump. There's something wrong. I was like, Coach, I never could jump. He didn't buy it. So they sent me home and they did another MRI. And that was when it was like, yeah, you physically can't play anymore. And so that was the hardest part about that season was I knew we were on pace to win a championship. We had the pieces together. You know, they had just spent all their money getting Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen there to go with Paul Pierce. And I mean, I knew it. And so it was hard to swallow that pill. I was, like I said, the year before I was ready to be done playing forever. But then I got a taste of, damn, I'm finally going to be on a championship team after being on all the teams in high school, college, and previous NBA teams that coulda, woulda, shoulda. And I had to watch the team that I was on go and win a championship. And So I ended up, I got that ankle operated on, and I was like, well, that one doesn't hurt because I have back issues. So my left leg is mostly numb anyway. That one didn't really bother me. And I said, but my right ankle is the one that hurts. And they looked at my right ankle. It was exactly the same. So as soon as I was out of the boot in my left foot, I got my right ankle surgery too. So I got both my ankles rebuilt in the spring of 2008 while my team was going on to win a championship. But I got a ring. Paul Pierce won me an NBA ring. And I've said it multiple times, but I wear that ring for all the teams. Like I said, high school, I was playing in the playoffs every year. College, same thing. In my senior year, we should have gotten one of those rings for Roy. Should have been the first one he ever won. And definitely the Sacramento Kings, we should have won one in the Western Conference Finals against the Lakers. We choked in Game 7 and lost that one. Game 6 was a travesty, but we choked at home in Game 7. With the Pacers, we get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and the Detroit Pistons knock us out. Get to the NBA Finals with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Spurs just swept us. Didn't even give us a chance. And so I've been on some good teams that could have, would have, should have, and so I wear this ring for all those.
That's freaking awesome. That's awesome. I wanted to ask you, one of the things that the fans had asked us about was your experience on Survivor. I wanted to ask, is reality TV where you get done shooting the skit and then you walk off and you're sipping Mai Tais on the beach, or is it what is the reality behind reality TV?
So I kind of thought that was it, even though they told us beforehand. It's real, and it's real. There is no break. I lost 46 pounds in 28 days on the show. I was hungry and thirsty. The good news is I started at 311, so I just got back down to playing weight, which was nice. It wasn't like I was down in the low 200s or anything. I just got back down to like 266 or something like that. But it's definitely real. The bug bites, the infections, they'll never go back to Cambodia. That's where we filmed. They lost like 20 crew members to illness and infections. We were all taking malaria pills the whole time. And then I was like, what are the side effects of the malaria pills? And they're like, oh, nightmares and this and that. I'm like, oh, yeah, so that's why I'm having nightmares. Awesome. So I said, what's the cure? And he goes, oh, if you get malaria, we just give you a bunch of these pills and it'll cure you. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to risk getting malaria then. So I stopped taking the malaria pills. But yeah, the surviving part is very real. Now, the edit, think about it this way. And back when I used to give speeches, I would talk about this, about presenting yourself and the best version of yourself. When I was on Survivor, 3 days was the average amount of time that they would film us 24 hours a day. They're filming you in the dark. There's a whole big wall of night vision cameras, and they film everything, even when you're sleeping, just in case you get up and go look for an idol. You got to tell the producer, but there's always somebody awake watching you. But it's 3 days for one 40-minute episode because 20 minutes of commercials. Back then, I don't know what it is now, but back then that was 3 days. So in the last 3 days, have you done something dumb? Have you said something you wish you hadn't said? Have you been funny? Have you been smart? Have you been just a dick? Chances are all those things is probably a yes. Well, they can take all that footage and they can put it all together and they can kind of make you look however you want. Some people that I was on the show with, now I knew this going in, I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to be a villain. I saw the other tattooed guy and I was like, well, Jason, we're probably going to be villains. Let's live it up. And we did. We had a great time. We had a blast and I got death threats. My wife was pregnant when the show finally came out and people were saying, I hope your baby is born still. I mean, people are horrible. This is social media. You guys know. But yeah. we got all kinds of hatred just because of reality TV. And so that's the problem, Mitch, is people think that reality TV is real. But they forget that it's a game show. I was trying to win $1 million. I didn't try to make any friends out there. I wasn't trying to do what I would do in my real life. It was a game show. I felt like I was on The Price is Right, like, hey, oh no, put the fire out. Yeah, fine. Somebody's done that before. It was nothing that nobody on Survivor had ever done. but the amount of hate that you get for being a villain on the show, some people on our cast really had a hard time with their edit and their mental health. They had to go to counseling. And there's a guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but there was a guy on a previous season. He had to be institutionalized for a short amount of time because the PTSD he had from the show. He lost it. He really had some struggles, and I heard he's okay, but I don't know. But so yeah, it's both real and it's also heavily edited, and so it can mess with people that are. There's even contestants, on the show that think it's real, and I'm like, this sucks, but I mean, it's like a long camping trip, and getting voted out was the best thing in the world. I had 11 days of vacation where I was eating and drinking Mai Tais on the beach. And all I had to do was wait for a jury meeting. I'm like, this is sweet. I'm swimming in the ocean every day. The only thing that was missing was my family. It was awesome. The 11 days after, but yeah, the game. And by the way, don't mention to Jeff Probst that he's from Kansas. He doesn't like that.
How fast did you put on the weight that you lost? I mean, you said you lost over 40 pounds. How fast did that take you after?
It took a while because I actually liked being thin again. It's easier on my knees when I'm under 300 pounds. They hurt, and so I try to stay under 300 as much as I can. I stayed there. I bounced back up to 280 pretty quick, but I stayed under 290 for probably a few years after that. And then, problem is, my wife is an incredible chef. She cooks literally every single day. We hardly leave the house to eat because she cooks every meal from scratch, and she makes make sure the kids aren't eating. Because a lot of our food supply is poisoned. So she tries to shop around that and avoid those kind of foods. But it's tough. But, everything she makes is so good. It's hard to just – portion control is my problem. It's all good for you. But it's like, oh, this is good. I'm going to have 5 more.
That's a good problem to have.
It is. She's an incredible person.
All right, everybody, that's it for another episode of Rock Chalk Unplugged. Scott, we want to say thank you for coming on. A great guest, great story. Your time at KU was special. Your time after KU was special. And then your time after the NBA was also special with your time in reality TV and being an actor. So thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. This has been another episode of Rock Chalk Unplugged. Like, subscribe, and leave us a comment down below. Rock Chalk.